Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere, Retold. Today, we're going to be throwing it back with another story from Poverty Flats, Wyoming, that tiny town that's just about as close to the middle of nowhere as you can get. Here's a brief message from our sponsors before we get going. We're sponsored by Basins Market, located in Basin, Wyoming. Basins Market is your destination for groceries, fresh produce, and the best meat department in the Bighorn Basin. Come in and sample their wide selection of products Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and Sundays from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. We are also sponsored by the Wyoming Welcome Program. The Wyoming Welcome Program offers two services to local businesses: Table Talk and the Wyoming Welcome Baskets. Wyoming Welcome Baskets are filled with promotional items for local businesses and distributed to new move-ins to the Bighorn Basin. Table Talk brochures include jokes, facts about the state of Wyoming, the month's holidays, and advertisements from our local businesses. These brochures are placed on restaurant tables in Cody and Powell for diners to peruse. So if you'd like to get your business name out there, please contact the folks at the Wyoming Welcome Program by shooting an email to Haley J, that's HALEYJ, at wyomingwelcome.com. Do you have a noxious weed problem? The team at 307 Pest Management can help. We offer residential and commercial noxious weed management that is safe and affordable. Whether you have a parking lot, a yard, or some production land that needs treated for noxious weeds, 307 Pest Management is ready to help get your weeds under control. Give them a call today for a free quote at 307-250-0614 or send an email to 307pestmanagement@gmail.com. Like I said, today is an Untold Tale Retold, and the story that we are going to retell today stings. Well, I guess it could sting. I don't know if anyone actually did get hurt in this story, but I just don't remember anyone actually getting stung. If you are not sure what I'm talking about, then you probably don't remember George and the Hornets. And that's a story that I'm going to retell today. So settle in, get something to drink or a snack to eat. Maybe you're driving or something and you can relax like that. Or if I'm distracting you from some form of torture like running, you got this. But all that aside, here we go with George and the Hornets. Dolichovespula maculata, or the bald-faced hornet, can be found in large swaths of North America. Their territory includes the Rocky Mountains in northern Wyoming, which means us kids on Poverty Flats were well acquainted with the ornery buggers. Insects and bugs were a constant source of entertainment for us, especially given how much time we spent outside running around on the large acreage afforded to us by the family farm. From ants to antlions, and from beetles to June bugs, we had caught, chased, admired, and squished just about all of them. Seeing as my family of 9 lived in a tiny trailer house, we spent a lot of time outside with the bugs, if only to avoid being inside with all of us. We weren't the only ones in and around Poverty Flats who spent a considerable time of outdoors, though. The primary source of income for most people in our area was agriculture, and just about everyone I knew was suntanned all summer and windburnt all winter, and George Mendicant was no different. George was no farmer, though he certainly came from farmer stock. He lived in an old beat-up trailer house in town, as we called the nearby unincorporated settlement of Otto. At one time, the town had been a thriving little community, but now the population sign that proudly claimed a population of 50 was the subject of various jokes, since the number of people living within the boundaries of the little huddle of houses was actually far fewer. Lucky for us, the government only pays to update population signs when a population increases. So we were safely set at 50, with little to worry about as far as changing the sign went. George was among the purported 50 people living in Otto, but he was hardly ever home. I remember riding the school bus home many days and seeing him out walking miles from his trailer. I myself had once walked the 4 miles home from baseball practice in Otto and was offered a ride by all 3 people who drove past in the 45 minutes it took me to get back to my house, but people hardly ever offered George a ride anymore. He would never accept one. He just liked walking, I guess. At least, anyone who did it that much must really like it, I figured. Or else, why would he keep on doing it? I reckon George walked at least 20 miles a day, going all over the basin. People had seen him as far away as Burlington, having covered the whole distance of 12 miles on foot. Whatever the reason for George's walking, that's what he did. No one is sure how he paid for food or groceries. It could be his sister Sal took care of him. She worked in Basin at the Basin City Cafe, and she was all the family George had left in the world. He must have been 50, and he had no wife, no kids. My twin brother and I were actually a little frightened of George. Once in a while, when we rode our bikes around the flats on a hot summer day, we'd see him, just plodding along, a water bottle tucked under one arm and his hands in his pockets. He wore an old cowboy hat and always had on faded blue jeans and a western shirt. Because he walked so bow-legged, his boot heels were worn down at a slant, like the little hill on those steep grade signs you see coming off the mountain. A dusty white sock peeked out from the toe of one boot, and the other boot flapped its leather and rubber mouth in complaint as he walked, the sole having come loose. It was on one of those exceptionally hot summer days in northern Wyoming when my twin brother and I were playing with my cousins Billy and Nick. We usually played outside between our 2 houses, using slats from the lumber pile to sword fight, or digging forts with the rusty shovels we borrowed from Grandpa's shed. Today was no different. "Ouch! You don't have to hit so hard," I complained to Billy. He was the largest and the oldest out of all of us, which also meant he was the most accomplished swordsman. "Oh, don't be a wimp, Al," he shouted back. "You'll never reach swordsman second class if you don't learn to take a hit or two." He smiled and swatted at my twin brother Fred, who howled in pain and dropped his stick. Nick, who had learned to keep his distance, called over to us from where he was standing. "Hey guys, come look at this!" There, in a tree above his head, was a huge, bald-faced hornet nest. This hive was undoubtedly Guinness World Record material. It hung from one of the lower branches in a honey locust tree and looked for all the world like a giant ball of strips of old newspaper all wadded together. From the small black hole at the bottom of the mass flowed a steady 2-lane highway of black and white hornets, all buzzing angrily. "Whoa," I breathed, scurrying over on my 7-year-old legs. "Look at that! It's huge!" For a moment we contemplated the hive, during which time several thoughts began to develop in our adolescent minds. Now, anyone with a lick of common sense knows that the best course of action when it comes to dealing with wasps or hornets is to give them a wide berth, and if it is absolutely necessary to get rid of them, you should never do it without taking certain precautions, including wearing a beekeeper's suit and carrying a large can of something with a label that sports multiple warnings about getting cancer in the state of California. Needless to say, we didn't have a lick of common sense at that stage in life, so none of this occurred to us until much later. "Gimme that," Billy said, pointing to a pink badminton racket that happened to be leaning against my aunt's porch. "Okay," I said, and handed the racket over. As Billy swished the racket through the air, a wicked little zipping noise hissed around him. A devious smile blossomed on each of our faces, and our eyes lit up. This was going to be great. Cautiously, Billy approached the hive, his eyes tracking each of the little winged devils as they swarmed around the hive. Taking careful aim, he selected a target and took a swing. A satisfying little ping was followed by the sight of a hornet zipping away somewhere around the speed of sound. "Did you see that?" I laughed. "Let me try," Fred shouted. As fun as it was smacking wasps across the garden, we soon tired of the game, and since none of us had been stung yet, we devised a more violent approach to wasp management. When the first rock Billy hurled at the nest hit it, the effect was instantaneous. The gray piñata of death erupted into a furious swarm of black and white hornets, and the sound was not unlike a small chainsaw revving at full throttle. Us other three boys didn't even have time to throw our own rocks before the hornets were upon us. "Run!" Nick screamed, and we hightailed it like a posse of raccoons getting chased by a hound dog. I was certain I was going to end up in the hospital with 1,000,000 wasp stings and a face the size of a cantaloupe. As I sprinted, I could see the hornets on Billy's tail, inches from his backside. With a gasp, I ran faster. Eventually, the buzzing beasts stopped and returned to the hive, satisfied with their work. We made it out of the yard and stopped just short of the stock pond that lay across the road from my aunt's house. At the edge of the scummy water, we stopped to catch our breath. Maybe it was the distance we had run, or maybe it was the sheer stench of the fetid water that stopped the wasps' progress. But they wouldn't come near the pond. Once we could talk, we regrouped. The first rock Billy had thrown shook the nest and added a back door for the bald-faced hornets to enter and exit their fortress, but it did nothing to calm their fury. Naturally, we had to have another try. Even more cautiously, we all lined up in a row again, rocks clenched in our fists. "This time, everyone throw it once," Billy instructed. We all nodded and fixed our sights on the curling ribbons of paper hanging from the nest, and the flurry of furious wasps surrounding it. "On the count of 3, Billy grunted. I shifted the rock in my grip and gulped. Drawing back, we waited. That's when I heard the crunch of boots on gravel. "1," Billy whispered. "Wait," I said. "Who's that on the lane?" "2," Billy said through clenched teeth. "Is that George Mendicant?" Fred asked. 3, Billy bellowed. This time, when Nick and Belly launched a couple river rocks into the damaged hive, atomic insect warfare broke out. If we thought the wasps were angry before, then they were livid now. It was like every single one of the 1,000 hornets had turned into a half-crazed, bloodthirsty killing machine. Ice-cold terror gripped my heart, and the hearts of the other boys as well. I'm convinced the 4 of us would have been neck and neck with a collegiate track team as we streaked from that yard with the host of hornets in tow. George never knew what hit him. I imagine the first thing he noticed was 4 blurs blazing past him as he trudged along the dirt road. Maybe he even heard the high-pitched screaming coming from Nick's mouth. But it's more likely Nick's screams were drowned out by the roar of the army of bald-faced hornets as they broiled out of my aunt's yard. Poor George was probably still trying to figure out what the heck had just happened when the wasps hit him. Now, I knew George could walk 20 miles in a day, but I never knew he could run. By the time we surfaced from the stock pond, George was already halfway down the lane. I've seen deer jump cattle guards, but that was the first time I ever saw a man do it, especially one of George's age and stature. He sailed over it like it wasn't even there. Before we could shake the pond scum from our heads, George and the hornets were just a speck on the county road. The hornets never came back. I tend to think George lost them somewhere by the river, because we never saw them again. Come to think of it, we never saw George walking our place again either. The next time I saw George, it was miles from Poverty Flats. He was wearing a new pair of shoes, some running shoes, and rather than shuffling along as he usually did, he was moving at a brisk jog. From that day forward, George ran wherever he went, and he became one of the best runners in our community, winning many prizes at the annual Pioneer Day 5K. People always wondered what happened to transform George from a long-distance walker to a long-distance runner. But no one but us boys knew it was because of a few river rocks and an exceptionally large nest of bald-faced hornets. And so that's the story. I hope you enjoyed George and the Hornets as much as I did, and I sure have enjoyed sharing it with you. As always, if you would like to get in touch with me and share a story of your own or some feedback about the podcast, you can reach me at untoldtalesthepodcast@gmail.com. Well, I guess that wraps it up for this week. We'll see you next time on Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere, where we work twice as hard for half as much and still find time for the important things, like fishing. See you next time.